Hello and welcome back to the Solo RolePlayers podcast. I am your host PJ, and today on the show I am going to be pulling another book off my shelf that is unplayed by me and mostly unlearned by me, get it to the table and just see what it's like. The idea of this is A, it gives me an excuse to get all these wonderful, beautiful, world-filled books off my shelf, and B, give you a bit of an idea of what the game might feel like, what it's like. This is absolutely not going to be a lesson on how to play the game or a rules teach, but it may well give you an idea of the sort of vibes and the feel of the game, and maybe whether that's something that's worth you checking out. The other thing it does, I hope, is give you a bit of courage to get those books off your shelves, even if you don't know the rules or you're not confident with it, to just try things, push buttons, lean into the parts of it that seem exciting to you, because after all, in solo play, you are your only audience, and that is a really freeing thing, although initially scary. We talk about that a lot in the show. However, the game we are playing today is called Wilderfeast. And Wilderfeast is a bit of an odd duck, I think. I don't know anything about its conception or anything like that. I came across it in one of those fateful Black Friday situations where I needed an extra little bit of money to get the free shipping or whatever. And so I just grabbed it because it kind of looked cool and reminded me of Monster Hunter. And I had a lot of fondness for Monster Hunter back in the day. And it seemed like something that that was just quite different to a lot of the other games that I'm playing and that I have. It also seemed like something that might be fun to play co-op with my son, and it seemed like something that had a few more mechanical elements that might be a candidate for playing off-mic, which I am more and more looking for stuff that I want to play off-mic, just because it's a different experience and I'm not restricted to those times that I can physically record. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you a little tiny bit of an introduction to the world just by reading a few little passages here and there, just to give you a feel for the flavor. The art in this book is very, very colorful, very cartoony, and the idea is that you are these wilders, and I'll get a little bit into the history, but not much. You are these wilders who are people who have sort of merged with animal powers a little bit, not really, and you're also all chefs. So the idea is that in this land, there are huge, immense beasts roaming around the place, and animals are essentially good things, except these beasts have been infected by something called the frenzy, and they are causing all sorts of problems. They're destroying villages, they are harming other animals, and so wilders have taken it upon themselves to tame these beasts, mostly kill them, and cook them up into delicious meals to absorb their powers. It does take quite a lot of care to talk about animal cruelty and a bit about veganism, if you're a vegan, how you can still play this game without eating the animals. But the idea is that all of the wilders are in touch with nature, and all of them are responsible for animals, and they look after animals as well. It's just these frenzied beasts, they need to be stopped because they are causing harm, and their powers need to be absorbed so that we can stop more frenzied beasts. That's kind of the overview of it. They go into a lot of history and lore about how this happened to the land. I think it calls itself a post-apocalyptic. So there was some sort of apocalypse, and then everything went back to tribalism, and then there was another sort of apocalypse. And then things mutated. That was my general idea. I didn't read too much of that, just enough, and looked at enough pictures to give me an idea. Mechanically, this game is quite interesting too, and especially for the solo player, because it seems the way that you put together the skills that you're going to use, you are combining two words, which is very similar, very familiar to us in the solo role-playing scene. So if I want to... In fact, I'll give an example of my fight. I did a couple of turns against some cool spider creature, which also shoots flames out of its tail and looks a bit like a scorpion, and the idea is that it lies on its back and hides under the dirt and catches its victims and then barbecues them with its flamethrower tail. It's silly, but also really cool. And so my idea was I was trying to cut off this tail, because mechanically there are impacts depending on which part of the body you cut off. If you cut off the tail, for this spider, for example, One of its abilities is Fire Breath, which does a lot of damage, and if you cut the tail off, it can no longer do that attack. So there are some tactical elements to that, and I think depending on the parts that you break off or you cut off or you it's called break in the game, depending on the parts that you break, that I think has an impact on the ingredients that you can use to power yourself up later. So for example, I was trying to cut off this tail, and I swung my big sword using a mighty strike and did a heap of damage, and there wasn't much left. And if you do another attack, you have to choose another word. So I then went with a precise craft roll, because I was trying to precisely just hit again in the same bit that I hit and just cut off that last little bit of tail. And that really helped me with visualizing what was going on and coming up with that idea. And it has mechanical, like that is literally how the mechanics work. Depending on the words you use, you have more or less success based on your character. Okay. Let me read you a couple of flavory things. I hope that wasn't too much preamble. But it is what it is. Let me read you a couple of things, and then I'm going to tell you where I have decided to start my scene, how I'm going to do it, and then we're going to start playing. You are what you eat. Hunter, ranger, keeper, chef. You are a wild eater, better known as a wilder. You're human, though you might not look like it, as with every hunt, you incorporate part of another monster into yourself. The first among your kind dedicated their lives to containing the frenzy, the incurable curse which amplifies hunger, pain, and rage in vicious cycles. But despite their best efforts, the frenzy now circulates with virulent speed across the one land. Hope remains that you can save the monsters threatened by the supernatural disease, but it is a hope that requires diligence and sacrifice. So that's, basically what I said. It's this frenzy thing is causing the monsters a lot of pain, and you're basically putting them out of their misery. It looks like the history of the world is quite well written. It's all written from like a journaled perspective, and I think not entirely reliable narration, which I always love in a game. But I do recommend, I think there's a quick start guide for free, so I recommend if you're interested more in the lore, you can check that out. Now, a brief overview of the structure of this game. It is broken up into 4 sections. You have free play, where you can be creative and form connections with the world around you. That's where you set your goals, develop your relationships, get new, quests, or get new quests, discover what you need to do, what the problems are that need to be solved, that kind of thing. Then you go on to the trail, which is where you're hunting. I won't use the word hunting, be clear in a second. The trail is where you're tracking one of these monsters. Once you've decided on your target, you have to track the monster, and there you are discovering tracks, you're traversing landscapes, and you'll be doing tests and things through there to see how well you track the monster. And the monster will be moving at the same time, so it'll be either moving away from you or towards you at the time as you track it. So that trail portion of the game is variable in time, depending on what the GM, or in this case, the dice, tell me what the monster is doing. Then you have the hunt, which is you confront your prey using all of your training, wits, and monstrous strength. That's where you bring in your traits and techniques into a fast-paced tactical combat. And the combat does seem quite tactical. We'll get back to that in a minute. The final portion of the game is the feast, where you gather around the fire to share a meal with your packmates, mix and match ingredients to restore stamina, gain bonuses, both temporary and permanent. So that's the kind of part where you sort of craft your character then. You sit down and you write out recipes, and depending on which parts of monster and food ingredients that you use, you're going to give yourself, basically, it's a bit like making potions, some of which have permanent effects. Also really nice for the solo aspect. This game is absolutely not designed to be played solo. I've never heard, there's very little information about it. I've never, in my brief Googling, haven't seen anyone talking about playing it solo. I very well may be the first person in the history of the world to play this solo. Probably not. But with these games, I'm always looking for things to hang on to that benefit the solo player. And this sectioned loop, free play, trail, hunt, feast, that kind of loop is really nice for solo play, because you can play within one of those boxes for a while, and when you feel like you need to move on, you have a clear cut, okay, now we move on to the next phase. And I think that's really good for keeping up the solo player's momentum. I, for the first time, didn't create any characters, and I lent into the pre-gens, which I've never done before. Pre-gens is something I always think is pretty cool, but I also always want to make my character. But in this case, since I just wanted to get it to the table, these seemed really fleshed out, these characters. And for this first play, I just printed all of them, and I'm going to use some of them. I think I'm going to have 3 and try and juggle all 3. See how that goes. I think the overhead for the mechanics is not that high on this, so that's okay. And then if I do continue to play this narratively into the future, then for the Patreon podcast, then I will make a character and sort of start to build a bit of a story. Our story starts blatantly stolen from one of the examples in the book. The mechanic of challenges. So this is done, at least in this case, in the free play section of the game. And what I'm going to do is, a challenge is basically a group task. We have them in Fallout, we have them in a couple of other games, and you basically have a target number that you need to reach and a timer counting down. And so you're going to try using creative, imaginative ways, which is, best thing about RPGs, you're going to try and solve the problem in the amount of time given. So you're going to try and reach that target number before the timer runs out and some consequence happens. I'm literally just stealing the example. The example is that a herd of monsters stampedes straight towards a village. Diverting them is a TN10 challenge. Time is limited to a 4 timer, ticking away every time a wilder makes a test. Okay. That's all I'm reading from that. Then it gives examples of the kinds of things you might do. I'm going to ignore that. What is happening? I'm going to draw a card. I do have the cards for this game, although everything is in the book as well. I'm going to draw a card to see what our village is and what the monster that started this stampede is. So these are some other sort of beasts, some herbivore type beasts or something, and these are not beasts that we're trying to kill, but we do need to divert them away from this village, our village, somehow. And I figured this would be a good way. Using examples in books, I've started to do a little bit, and I think it can be quite useful because it literally is there to tell you broadly how something works and give you a feel for it. So taking the example and then doing it in a different way, but being able to cross-reference it to the example that they give, I find really useful for learning it. So I'm just going to draw a random card here and say that is what our village is. I think, let me see, Lamentations Trail. This is also extreme conditions because we're in the mountains. It has cliffs. So it has an additional terrain, cliffs where creatures can either climb or fly. When a wilder travels here, they can make a grab instead of a traversal. Oh, that's cool. And it's exhausting terrain. Wilders must spend 5 stamina to make mighty traversals here. Mighty is one of those keywords, the styles of how you're going to do a test, and it usually gives you better results, but costs more stamina or actions. There's also a chance of landslide. So this is good. Not only, in fact, maybe we're not trying to protect the village. Maybe we are trying to protect these animals from hurting themselves, and we're trying to calm them. I like that better. Or should I ask Mythic? I will not ask Mythic, but I do have something to say about Mythic. I've been feeling recently that I have been drifting away from Mythic, and I think that that's been a bad thing. I've started, as part of what I'm doing with these books, forgive the tangent, but as part of what I've been doing with this Get the Book Off the Shelf series, I've been trying as much as possible to use all the self-contained tools within those books, and mostly to great effect. But I have found that maybe I'm missing Mythic. And my logic was, well, Mythic has proven to me to be fantastic, stunning, amazing, incomparable for large overarching narrative stuff like the Fallout, like a Wasteland story that I'm doing. But for like a dungeon crawler or these smaller games, like what do I need Mythic for? I should just use something simpler. But I have found things lacking sometimes in some of those games. So I'm going to come back in this game and use Mythic, even though I don't necessarily plan it to be a big narrative thing. That's my personal experiment for the day. Maybe some of the problems I've been facing has just been because I've drifted away. I've gotten too far from Mythic. So I've decided we are not protecting a village from this stampede. In fact, we live in the mountains. We live in a cave. And I think overlooking some village. We'll figure out what that is later. And there is a stampede of monsters, and I think using Mythic, I am going to create this opening scene. Doing it properly. So it's a normal morning in our little cave up on this mountainside, overlooking the village of... randomly drawing a card now. Not actually sure which are towns and which are communities, whatever. Doesn't matter. Near a village, and in this cave, which I rolled up, is a den, a cave made homely, on a sheer mountain slope with no one else. Okay? So that was based on a 3 dice roll that gave me that thing. Our pack has an oath, which I chose, and our oath is to fulfill promises, honor tradition, and protect community. So I think... I'm not sure if there's a community nearby. We'll come to that when it becomes relevant. At the moment, we are up in our mountain, and it is a normal day like everything. I kind of picture these characters, they're sort of cartoon characters, a little bit anime. They're kind of kids, I guess. They don't have to be, but that to me sort of fits the tone. They're like, wild kids. But wild cartoon kids, so they're actually really strong and cool and, responsible and whatever else. So we're sitting in this cave, and all of a sudden, maybe someone is cooking. That sounds about right. Someone is cooking breakfast. We have Prize, Leon, Knot, and Bug. And Bug is cooking breakfast at the moment and chatting away about, retelling a story of that famous hunt that he did or something like that. And then all of a sudden, the spoon on the table, the wooden spoon on the table that he's about to reach for, starts rattling. And he says, guys... And they run out, and they see around the edge of the mountain pass, there is a stampede of animals coming towards us. That is our first scene. I'm going to write that up, and then we're going to test it. So we're now going to test that scene. Our chaos factor is 5 because we're just starting off. So testing the scene, roll a d10 compared to the chaos factor. If you roll over, it is expected. Yes, that makes sense, because the more chaotic, the more likely things are to change. The music I'm listening to at the moment, there is a Wilderfeast playlist. I always like it when there's a playlist that someone has made for these games. But it seems to be entirely music from this quite fun little game called... what's it called? Frost? I'll think of the name in a minute. But it's basically another version of Slay the Spire. I was playing it on the Switch a bit with my son. And it's really cool. It's a similar idea, sort of card-based, turn-taking, what's it called? Roguelike sort of a game, or roguelite sort of a game. And this music is entirely the music from that, which thematically and artistically suits it really well. Forgive the sidetrack. So we're going to test the scene. We are now rolling a d10. The chaos factor is 5. We roll a 7. So things do happen as expected. So the pack all bound out of the front of this cave, and they kind of like jump up and leap up and crouch on various rocky positions and sort of observe what's going on. And Bug says, look, it's a stampede of some animal. I'm not sure what they are yet. We'll look it up if it becomes important. And they're running around the corner, running along the mountain path. And Fisher says, oh, something must have spooked them. They're really going to hurt themselves if they go off the edge of that cliff, or, And then someone else, not Fisher, Prize, and then Leanne pops in and she says, yeah, or worse, they could cause an avalanche affecting the village below. So I've just decided there is a village below. Or maybe even block the pass or something like that. Okay, we need to calm them down. We need to stop them. That is our starting scene. That is how we start. So... looking at the traits of this area now, we know we have extreme conditions. So, wilders who travel here and fail become exposed. Exposed is a specific term that affects the creature's targeting. So the monster will target characters who are caught or exposed in different ways. So it basically means you're off your guard, as far as I can tell. It has cliffs, which means you can grab instead of traverse. And it's exhausting, so you have to make 5 stamina to move. Okay. And there's a potential of landslides. Each time the pack enters this area, roll a d6. If on a 5+, collapsing slopes have blocked an old path. The pack loses a style to travel here until they learn it again. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, I'm not worried too much about the details, precise details of that room. It also has ingredients. So here, not only are there ingredients from the monsters, but you're also collecting in other ingredients. There's wild wood, glow moss, worm, long bean, and they all have different effects. That's cool. I like it. But at the moment, we are just testing the mechanics by trying to stop this fight. So the way the tests work in this game, on every character sheet, everyone has the same 4 styles. That is mighty, precise, swift, and tricky. And then everyone has a set of skills, which are the same, but have different modifiers to them based on your character. Assurance, call, craft, cure, display, so on. Grab, strike, study, traversal. So traversal, in this case, was mentioned on this card already, saying that you must spend 5 stamina to make a mighty traversal. The way that works, if I were to try and make a mighty traversal with this character prize, they have a stat 3 in mighty, which is the highest, at least so far, starting out. And in traversal, they have a +0. The way that would work is I would then roll 3 dice, 3d6s, looking for a single success. A success is a 5 or a 6. Happily, which this makes perfect sense, but I haven't seen it in other games before. But the way that advantage and disadvantage is handled here is at disadvantage, it just pushes it so that only 6s are a success, and at advantage, 4s as well. That's a really nice little thing. The twist to this mechanic, so this is just a dice pool mechanic at this point, similar to Forbidden Lands, but simplified quite a lot. The twist to it is that every time you make an action, every time you take a move, I forget what it's called, every time you do one of these moves, you need to choose whether you do it carefully or whether you go wild. Either way, you are going to roll an action die along with those d6s. You can choose to play it safe and roll a d8, or you can choose to go wild and roll a d20 with it. The idea is that the number that comes up on that action die gives you the quality of your success. If you fail, you just fail, and then the number on that die doesn't have an effect. But it gives you the quality of your success. If you roll a 1 to 4 on the action die, it's a partial success or a success with a complication. If you roll a 5 to 8, then it happens exactly as you intended it. If you roll higher than 8, as in you're using the d20, that then becomes a critical. And it also is going to contribute to how much damage you do. Often the damage you do is 2 times your action score if you're doing a mighty strike, for example. So it means that by going wild, if you do succeed on the d6s, by going wild, you have a chance to make huge differences in the amount of damage that you do. However, if you choose to go wild and roll the d20, you have to drop one of the d6s, making your chances for success that much lower. And if you fail when going wild, then you lose some harmony. And harmony is a shared resource between the whole pack, and it represents your in-touchness with nature and the wild and yourself and your pack and everything. And it's bad. Harmony is really important. It's bad to lose it. I think you can lose, there's a maximum of 3 harmony at the beginning. And everything just gets worse if your harmony is lower. I haven't looked too much into that. I just know that harmony is a resource, a shared resource that you're constantly worried about, which is cool. I like that. The other really nice thing, and this is just because I got the dice, again, trying to get that postage cost up. The dice are really nice. They're like a purpley and orange d6. They feel really nice. There's a nice d8, which is sort of a marbled, stony looking thing. And then the d20 that comes with it is a big, chunky, shiny, lumpy metal thing that looks like the scales, the shiny scales of a reptile. And that's really cool. It feels weird rolling the metal and the plastic together, but it's, anyway, cool touch. Actually, the production of this game is really stunning, and it made sense when I realized then I recognized the logo of the guys, of the people who made it, and it's Horrible Guild, and they make board games, and I've played some of their games, and they're good, and the components are great, so that makes sense. Okay, that is how a test works. We are going to try this now and see if we can make our first action to try and slow down this stampede and protect these creatures from themselves. I'm going to put a timer here as 4 rounds. Every time a wilder takes an action, we're going to tick it down. So we're going to tick that down to 3 now. We have a target number of 10, and we need to reach that number by the time this ticks down. Otherwise, bad stuff happens. So, the first thing that just came to my mind is we want someone to try and calm the leader of the stampede here. So I think the first thing we're going to have to do is traverse to try and get closer to them. They're not coming past us just yet. So we're going to have to spend one action to do a move. Every wilder gets 4 actions on their turn. So I've got a dice here saying 4. I'm going to spend one action to move into a position that is closer. Now, does it say I have to? No, some mighty traversals. In fact, I can't just move because I think a straight movement is when you're moving around fighting a monster. I think I'm going to have to do a traversal here. So we're going to do a precise traversal to try and get in position. And see what I mean by using these words here? By making it a precise traversal as opposed to a mighty one, it really paints the picture in my head of what I'm doing. I'm sort of like trying to get into a position, climbing carefully along the side of the rock so as not to disturb more rocks and freak the creatures out even more, and get into a position where I can mount the creature at the head of the stampede. So that is going to be my first move. That is a test, meaning that our timer counts down 1. We have a target number of 10. I now am going to do a test. A precise traversal. Precise for me is 2. So I get to roll 2 dice, and I'm looking for a 5 or a 6. That's not great odds. And in fact, let me find a character here who we might have someone who's better at this job. Okay, so Bug is the guy. Bug is a stock keeper. He is the guy who was cooking breakfast in the morning and decided and realized that the stampede was happening. Everyone has special abilities and stuff. We'll get into that when we come to it. I'll look at them maybe. Oh, hang on, here we go. Oh, strong grip, wide hands. At the cost of 2 stamina until your next turn, you gain 1 level in one of the following traits: climbing, digging, or swimming. This helps you traverse unfamiliar terrain. Your stamina drains fast if you use this too often, and remember you can't spend stamina after you're wounded too. Hey, I'm going to do that. So he can spend 2 stamina. Have 20 stamina. He now is down to 18, and that doesn't cost an action to do. So he's going to spend his 2 stamina and gain 1 level. That means we're going to get an extra dice. So we are doing a swift traversal. Swift is 3 for him. He now gets to roll 4 dice. That's feeling much better. Maybe we even can go a bit wild. No, I don't think we need to go wild because this is just trying to get into position and not actually calm the creatures down. So I'm rolling my 4d6s here, and we get 2 successes. Fantastic. Doesn't matter if it's 1 success or 2 success. As far as I know, it's just you're increasing the probabilities of getting a success. Now we need to roll our die. Our action die. We didn't go wild, so we rolled a d8, getting an 8. Excellent. So Bug spots, as the creatures are coming around the corner, still a little distance away, and he sees that there is a point there where it widens out a little bit, or rather maybe it narrows a little bit. Let's ask Mythic. Does the mountain pass that the creatures are traveling through at this point narrow? So it's 50-50. 9. So I think that's an extreme yes. Where's my Mythic chart again here? Yes, so that is an extreme yes. So this Bug notices that they're coming up to a part of the mountain where actually they can only fit 1 abreast. So it's an extreme yes. They have to narrow down. It's a real bottleneck, which also makes it a really good opportunity to be able to slow them down and stop them and then maybe calm them. So when he's doing his a precise traversal, he's doing a bit of wall jumping between this cavern. He's sort of running up to it and kind of jumping up and getting in position, and like he's spreading his legs out between the 2 walls and sitting there ready to drop into position as the thing comes past. And that was a huge success on his part. We rolled an 8 on the action die. That is all that happens. If I was doing damage at this point, that 8 points would go into damage. But at this point, it just means it was successful. It is still Bug's turn. We are going to tick down our timer 1 more turn because he has done 1 action. Maybe he's going to save the day himself. So technically that was a move action that we did. Move plus or minus 1 stride, gather up with a packmate, or change terrain. That's more for the hunt, but it doesn't matter. That's the same sort of idea. The next thing we're going to do is, I'm pretty sure you can do any action multiple times. You can also do things like prepare and gain an action next turn. Prepare and gain an action next turn. You can repair and restore durability on your tool. You can taunt, become the target. You can use a trait like we did with the climbing, or you can brace to halve any damage you take until the start of your next turn. Okay, so we're just going to improvise again, and we are going to try and drop down on top of this creature. We are now doing a precise... I think I used the wrong stat for him before, but it doesn't matter. We're doing a precise grab, yeah? Because we're going to drop down and grab round behind his neck. And we only have a 1 in precise, but we have +1 in grab. Okay, here we go. This is going to be tricky. Let's see how we go. I'm going to roll a single dice here. This doesn't count for climbing, I don't think. Let's see what other techniques we have. Close and personal. You gain advantage on strikes against creatures within 0 strides of you. Okay. Now, this isn't technically a strike, but I think I can call that a strike. You can use additional successes. You can spend additional successes to improve, either establish a detail about the situation or improve your action score. That's cool. I'm going to say I have strong hands. My weapon is mitts. They're like giant oven mitts. And he's a close and personal fighter. So I'm going to say that we're going to... The idea is we're going to drop down onto the neck of this creature. I'm imagining like some sort of dinosaur herbivore thing. What is it? Stegosaurus type looking thing. That's what I'm imagining. 4-legged, long necks, that kind of thing. And so Bug is going to drop down on the neck of this thing with his strong grip and wide hands. It's going to cost 2 more stamina. Oh no, sorry. That's not true. That was the climbing again. It doesn't cost anything. It's a passive ability. You gain advantage on strikes against creatures within 0 strides of you. So you only need to be within 1 stride to attack, but you gain a bonus if you get even closer. Okay. So in that case, I'm going to spend a move action to just drop onto him. I think I can just do that. That is taking us from 1 stride to 0 strides. That is taking another action, but it is not a test, so it doesn't count towards the timer. I have 2 actions left. I am now at distance 0, so the strides... We'll talk a bit more about this later, but distance is sort of abstracted. It doesn't matter where exactly you are when you're fighting a monster. It depends on how close you are. It's assumed that you're constantly moving around each other, but it depends on like when you're pushing forward to get closer or pulling back to break away. Those are the things that matter and not actually what you're doing at the distance. So we have 2 actions left. We are now going to do a strike, but we're not trying to hurt it. So it's going to be a... let me see. How this would work... I think it says that when you're playing this, you don't get to choose the words that you're using, but basically you describe what you're going to do, and then the GM will decide what best fits that. So let's try that. I have just jumped onto the neck of this thing, so I think maybe we have to incorporate the precise into it. I will. So we're going to do a precise grab. I'm only rolling 1 dice, but I do have advantage now, which means that I will succeed on a 4+, and we get a 2. Bugger. For the sake of this example, I'm going to say that I rolled a 3, because this allows me to show you how the skills work. In my precise style, I have 1, which means I get to roll 1 die, and then in grab, I have +1, which means I can add this number, this modifier, to any of my dice to try and get towards a success. So I'm going to push that 3 to a 4 with that +1, and then we get to roll the die. I didn't say, but I am going to be going carefully. I couldn't have gone wild because you have to lose a die to go wild, and I only had 1. So now I roll the action die, and we get a 3, which means it's a partial success. So what does that partial success look like? I think we've dropped down onto this thing's neck. With our big oven mitts, we've put our hands over its eyes, and let's see what the partial success might be. Mythic? Let's see if you tell us anything. Maybe we just get hurt or something like that. So that, let's just see what Mythic says. That is arrive, success. So I think we will arrive, success. Okay, so I think we'll succeed when the thing actually stops. It has slowed down, but it is now walking blindly forward. It's slowed down. Everyone else is slowing down behind it, and the other creatures are calming down because the leader of the pack, has slowed down a little bit. So they are calming down, and they are in a position where they could be calmed, but the leader is still going, and now he is walking, or now the creature is walking blindly towards a cliff as they come out, or they're just about to come out of this part of the entrance. Or maybe it's not a cliff, but we just need to actually stop him before he gets out of this entrance and they can break off again and hurt themselves. So, someone else is going to come in now. That's going to be his turn. I think his final action is he's going to brace, which costs 2 actions, which means he takes half damage next turn. That's what Bug is doing. We now move on to one of our other packers? No, what are we called? Wilders? And now what we need to do is we need to stop this creature somehow. And we have someone who's... Who is it? Not. Not has a weapon. Not's tool, they're not weapons, they're tools. Not's weapon is twine, which is kind of like a steel, like a huge roll. It would like be backpack sized. Huge, it's very cute. Well, they're called spool of thread, but it's made out of some sort of super arc steel, I think it's called, left over from the ancient civilizations. And happily, Not has the ability lasso and leash. Lasso and leash. It costs 3 stamina. Either pull yourself 1 stride closer to a creature or pull a packmate 1 stride closer to you. I'm going to say I can also use this in order to pull the creature down gently to the ground, which will stop it. But first we need to attach our... First we need to get the thread around the thing. So we have 2 actions left. Oh, and I didn't actually make a note. I forgot it's a... Okay. I wasn't adding up my action scores towards the target number, which I should have been doing. So the first one I think was actually 8. It should be probably that getting in the position was already part of solving the problem, and then so that 8 that we got on the action die would have got us close to the 10. Doesn't matter, because then we would actually have succeeded already. But narratively, I'm going to say we haven't done that yet. I'm going to say maybe it's 15. Maybe that was the complication, was that the target number went up a little bit. So we got 8, and then we got 3, which is 11. We're going to need 4 more action successes to be able to take this thing down. So the first thing we're going to do is try and wrap the twine around this creature. We're going to make a precise... So basically we're trying to... I guess we throw the needle. It's a lasso thing. So we're trying to do the lasso. Oh, I've got the wrong dude. Okay, so I'm going to say if I can get a successful shot on this now, and then use the lasso and leash to pull it sort of down. So I'm going to try and do a... Let's sort of see if we can narratively describe what we're trying to do, and then see what words make sense. We need to get this around the neck or the front legs of the creature, and we need to not hurt Bug, who's on there as well. So I think we're going to have to do a tricky craft. Tricky craft is what we're going to try and do. Happily, tricky for us is 3, and craft is +1. So I'm going to roll 3 die here. I think I'm still going to play it safe. If I went wild, I'd only be rolling 2 die, and that's not... I think that's a bit too risky. So I'm going to play it safe. I'm going to roll the 3 die and the action die, and we get 1 success with that 6, and we get a 3 on the action die again, so that is only a partial success. So we do manage to lasso the thing. That's bringing our actions... bringing our challenge number up to 14 of 15. So we're very nearly there. We have managed to sort of tie it up now, but now we need to pull it down to the ground. I'm going to say, which I would do if I was the GM, to use the lasso and leash. It costs 3 stamina. This is not technically what it's for, but it makes sense for me narratively in this situation, to give me advantage on being able to pull this creature down. So I'm now going to have to do a mighty... Or maybe we should pass on to someone else who's stronger than me. I think we are. So we're going to pass on to Prize then, who's stronger than whoever I just was. Not? I like Not. I think Not's my favorite already. We're going to pass on to Prize, who for the very last action is going to try and use his strength, or use their strength, to pull this creature down, blocking the thing and stopping the others. I think because it was an extreme narrowness, there's not even enough space for them to turn around. So if we can stop this first one, then we can go through and calm them. He is going to do a mighty... what? Probably a grab. A mighty grab to try and bring this front creature down. That is going to be rolling 3 dice. We don't need to go wild on this one because we only need one more action point to get us up to that target number. So we're going to roll 3 dice. That is 3 successes. Excellent. Which means we can test this technique as well. And that is perfect. So we roll a 2 on the action die there, which would be a partial success, even though we get to the target number. I'm not sure if that means we actually would just succeed, but we can show you this mechanic as well. You can spend extra successes to tick up that challenge die. So I'm going to spend 2 of those successes to tick it up to a 5. Sorry, what did I say? 2. It was 3. Tick it up to a 5 and succeed. So Prize comes in there and Not is there, and she's got the rope tied around the creature's thing, but it's still kind of pushing forward, and she's pulling down on this thing, and she says, "Quick, help! I can't get it down." And it's starting to get uncomfortable. She doesn't want to hurt it too much, and so Prize comes in and grabs her and helps together, and they pull this thing gently down, all the while soothing the creature as they go. And they succeed in stopping this stampede, stopping any creatures from hurting themselves, and potentially causing avalanches down toward the village. And that was that all came from one paragraph from an example an example in the rule book about how challenges work. What a great little scene. I think that's really cool. That was a good way to sort of learn how this game works. That is in the more free form part of it. When you get into battle, things are a lot more structured. Like you have specific attack types that do specific things, which we will get into as I have a little break, and we will continue on finding out what had these creatures spooked, and is it a monster that we're going to have to hunt? Okay, I am back. I am recaffeinated and ready to take on some enormous, cool beast and hopefully not die in the process. But first, let's set up our little scene here. So, scene number 2 for Mythic is going to be that. Our wilders navigate... So, the next thing that happens is we've managed to stop the first one. And then everyone else, all the other creatures behind it are sort of like shuffling and stuff, but they have calmed down a little bit. And the rest of the wilders jump along and sort of make their way through the pass, sort of leaping between the rocks on either side and sort of calming the beasts as they go. And they manage to get them under control and begin to lead them down to the village. That is going to be what our scene setup is, and then Mythic will tell us if that happens or not. Okay, we were pretty in control in that last scene, so I'm going to reduce the chaos factor to 4. We're now going to roll to see if our scene happens. That is a 10, so yes, it does. So we managed to... Whatever was chasing them or whatever spooked them is currently no longer behind them, or got distracted, or not sure yet. But we do manage to make our way through the pass here, calm the creatures down, and then sort of lead them gently down the mountain path down into the village. I think now, because we're traversing, I'm going to roll a d6 to see for this landslide trait of the landscape. This landscape traversal stuff, I did have a quick look in the book over a coffee there during the break, and there's a little bit more to the traversal stuff, which is actually kind of cool. It's good. It's still really simplified and really clear. You can see the board game background in this, where you basically do a test. It's almost like we did with calming this herd. Every time you enter a new landscape or traverse through a landscape, you have to do a target number challenge like that. You always pass through, which is nice. It's just if you pass through successfully, you get a positive event, random event, and if you fail to, then you get a negative random event. We're not going to do that right now because this episode's already getting a little longer, and I do want to get to a battle. So, do we get a landslide? We roll a 4, so we do not get a landslide. So we managed to make our way down into this village. And I think this is probably the village that it's sort of our village, even though we live up in the den. We're not residents there, but we're well known and we do sort of protect the area and this kind of stuff. And so I think we lead these creatures into a sort of field and pass them on to the farmers there, and sort of everyone gets settled down and all happy. And then we start talking and wondering about what was it that spooked these things in the first place. And so we decide to get prepared and head back up to the mountain pass and see if we can follow the trail back of the stampeding beasts and see if we can pick up a trail of some monster that might have spooked them. Because if there is a frenzied monster nearby, then we need to take care of that before it gets too close to the village. It is at this stage that we would go into the trail round. And I'm not going to do that really just yet, just for the sake of time. I'm just going to kind of simplify it and abstract it a bit to give you a bit of an idea of how it works. And then we're going to get straight into the juicy stuff. So again, the mechanics of this are really clear and laid out, which I certainly like for solo. And you go through and basically you figure out whether you have fresh tracks or old tracks. So we could decide that now just by asking Mythic. That's something the GM would usually do. We track our way back through the mountain pass following the stampede tracks, and then we pick up the trail of some monster. And we can ask, are the tracks fresh? That's a 13, so it's a yes. That means the monster is only one area away. You would go through navigating the area, and when you navigate an area, you learn things about it. You learn styles and techniques that you can use to harvest some of the things there. For example, in this area, if you harvest with the mighty style, then you can get wild wooder, which is going to end a fatigue or restore 8 stamina, for example. So basically, you need to learn different ways of how to harvest this. And this is something that your GM would tell you, or rather, this is something that the locals can describe how to do it. Or if you're not talking to NPCs, there's also an option in the rules where you can just observe the landscape. So I'm not sure how I would do that solo just yet, but I'm sure it wouldn't be difficult to figure out a way to do that and figure out how to harvest some of these things. So we're going to assume that we're going through and harvesting some things along the way. Foraging, making camp, which is where you can recover your conditions, your wounds, and you can cook and repair your tools, that kind of thing. Then you would go to move on, which is basically what we just did. Same style of what we just did with the herd there, where you start a challenge and you traverse. So let's say that we get a random peaceful event because we successfully did that thing earlier. I would roll a d6 as we're going through tracking this monster, and the peaceful event is look at that view. The wilderness is a natural spectacle. The guide establishes what the spectacle is like and when they're ready. The pack decides when they're ready to go. So basically, this is just an opportunity to rest. And if the wilder can add a memorable detail to the scene, I really like that because it's encouraging players, either solo or as a group, to add a bit of narrative and imagine and envision these things. And then you get 1 stamina if you add a little element to the scene. That's just a nice little thing. Then what would happen next is we would either find the monster before it finds us. So we either ambush it or we get ambushed, basically, depending on the outcome of that challenge to traverse the landscape and track it. Combat works exactly the same as the tests that we were just doing for the herd, for the group challenge there. It's exactly the same, basically, except you have specific attack moves that do specific amounts of damage. There are riskier ones which do more damage, but then you're exposed for the next turn, so on and so forth. A quick note about distance. As I said, the wilders are always assumed to be moving around the monster and the monster around them, and so the only importance in distance is closeness and farness. And basically, that depending on what the range is of your weapon, you need to be within a certain number of strides. 0 strides is like on top of the monster, climbing up it. For example, our guy with the oven mitts, he specializes in being 0 strides away. That's where he does the most damage. Then we have, who was it? We had another one here. Leanne, she has a torch, which she can apparently shoot with. And she has a passive ability of your torch gains range 3 shot. So you are the pre-generated character who can fight from the farthest range, keep your distance, and support your pack from behind. That's cool. She can also preheat, choose a packmate within 0 strides, as in the same space, until the end of the round. If the chosen packmate deals part damage, that part also becomes burned. Cool. But, so it says that technique is short range, so you must compromise your safety to use it. But if you can pull it off, it's worth it, as you can add burn. So she's their sort of support class. I don't know what burn does exactly, but we'll get to that. Anyway, we are now going to see... We're going to say that we ambush the monster so that we can go through how that works. Looking at the card of the area here, first let's ask, Mythic, is the monster in the same area? I think it's 50-50. That is a 2, so it's an extreme yes. Extreme yes means I think it's actually... I think when we go back up through the pass to take the tracks then, it's basically right there. So it is in this area. Maybe it's even in that pass. Let's see what it is, and we'll figure it out. The monsters here are Lapu Lapu, Onagung, Pondon, Sposu, Crown Wolf, so on. I'm just going to roll a die and see which one of these it is. There are 7 possibilities. I rolled a 3, so it is a Pondon. Ooh, let's see what a Pondon is. Again, you can just be flicking in the book, which is probably a good thing, which I will do anyway, because it'll give me some more about the personality, for want of a better word, of the monster. But I'm going to find the card here. Maybe not. Ah, yes. Ah, so this is some huge kind of burrowing creature. It looks like a cross between a badger, a huge badger, and a mole sort of thing. So I think, okay, I'm going to change it. I'm going to ask. No, I'm not going to ask. I think this thing jumps out at us, ambushes us by burrowing through the wall in this narrow pass, because we got that extreme yes earlier, burrowing through the wall in this narrow pass and leaps out, ambushing us as we come. Now, what would happen if we ambush the monster is you basically get an initiative round where everyone gets one action to kind of set themselves up before getting into the combat. If you get ambushed, the monster gets to go first. So if you did not find the tracks before combat began, then the monster has the initiative. Perhaps you stumbled unwittingly into its lair, or perhaps it's been stalking you unseen for some time. The guide sets each wilder's starting distance anywhere from 0 to 4 strides away based on what makes sense in the fiction. So I think this is happening as we are inside this path. I think we are sort of evenly spread out, and there are 4 of us, 3 or 4 of us. I'm just sort of grabbing character sheets as we go. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to roll a d6 and see which end of the path it bursts out. That is a 3, so right in the middle, and it separates us. It splits us. We're walking through the pass, and as we do, there's a rumbling, and this creature bursts through up from the ground, perhaps, leaving a hole in the ground and bursting out in front of us, separating us 2 on either side of this monster. Flicking to the monster page is worthwhile doing, even if you are using the cards, because it has a really great half-a-page journal entry of someone who discovered it. That's pretty cool. But most importantly, it also has a diet, which could be useful if we were going to try and trap it or something. And it has behavior. This is important. So if no creatures are exposed, target a creature who is digging, since underground is your domain. Your instinct is to maximize your current form strength. By default, you start the hunt in your fat form. This is you, the monster. Okay, so it has different forms. Interesting. So when it lumbers around when it's in its fat form, landing crushing blows with claws or tusks. If you're frightened or wounded, you dive underground. And then you change form. Cool. So when the monster's underground, it changes to a thin, almost snaky, or more like, what are those? Like a ferret form. It's a big fat thing when it's outside, and then when it's burrowing, it's like a thin ferret thing. That's cool. And it uses your longer reach to strike at creatures in any terrain while demonstrating the adaptations that make you the Sen's Coast biggest, best digger. Fantastic. Okay. I haven't much thought about how the monster behavior is going to work yet. That's something I'm just going to play now and test, and something that will bubble away in my brain for when I continue playing this later and see what I'm going to do for monster behavior. But I'm just going to use a combination of mythic and common sense and GMing in order to see what happens. It is time to begin the fight. This monster, this Pondon, bursts through the ground, separating the group, splitting them in half, and we can see instantly that this thing is completely frenzied. It is thrashing around. They're supposed to be calmer creatures, just burrowing around, and this one is clearly enraged and frenzied and needs to be stopped. So this creature leaps out and it singles out one of the wilders. Top of the pile here is Prize, who is our warrior, like our strength fighter, basically. And he is attacking. So the monster, I think I could roll to see. So he has 4 styles. Like us, mighty, precise, swift, and tricky. I could roll to randomly see which one of them we would use, but that doesn't really make sense because the monsters are more likely to do what they're good at, I think. Okay, so instead I'm going to roll to see which of its part it uses. There are 3 things here, so I'm rolling a d6. That is a 3. So he is using his claws, range 1. Precise strike or swift strike. I'm going with swift because he's enraged and he runs out. He leaps out and just tries to take a swipe at this. Increase the part's range by 1 if you're in long form. No, he's in short form. So he's going to do a swift strike against Prize, our cleaver-wielding wilder. Swift is 0 for him, happily. What happens if it's 0? Okay, we'll go with precise strike then. I'm sure that'll become clear later. So he's going to roll 3 dice against us. Monsters always go wild. I'm going to guess monsters always go wild. That makes sense. So it is going to be hitting me on a 5. That gets 2 successes, and it's going to roll its wild die. Hear that big heavy metal die roll. That is a 12, which means it is successful, and it's doing 12 damage. Oh boy. How does damage work? I think that takes it off our stamina. Burned, by the way, means you get disadvantage when using that part, so that could be really useful. Yeah, humans use d8s, monsters use d20s, but wilders can switch between them. Okay, so when you take damage, that affects your stamina. Typically, it can also affect other things. Your stamina is your sort of health as well. And if you reach 0, you get wounded and then reset the stamina. Wounded by itself doesn't do anything. Wounded 1. When you get to the next level of wounded, wounded 2, you can't spend stamina. And wounded 3, you're down, basically. So, because this creature did a mighty strike. No, it was a precise strike, wasn't it? That's good. So a precise strike, if you succeed, deals action part damage. So it is doing 12 damage to me. I have a stamina of 20. Now, maybe I could block or something and it could affect the tool. I'm not sure how that works. Doesn't matter just at the moment because we're just going to keep rolling through and see how this goes. That was the monster's 1 turn. We then each get to act, and the monster acts between each turn. The monster usually only does 1 action, but once per combat round it will do a full turn, which is 3 actions. And the GM will decide when that is. Basically, I will decide that or ask Mythic each turn. But now we get to go, and I think Cleaver, Prize with the Cleaver is going to strike back. So this monster leapt out of the ground or wall of this pass and took a huge swipe at Prize, who got hurt by it, but he's up. Let's just ask Mythic, did he go down? And what does this say? Okay, so we have keen senses. The monster has keen senses, which says spend 1 precise success, and a creature of your choice becomes exposed. So I think that means because he got 2 successes, he's going to spend that, and he's going to... Is he going to target the same one he just took down? 50-50. Is it 30? Yes, he is. So he is going to hone in on this one target. He's blinded. This creature's blinded by frenzy and rage. And poor Prize is now exposed. Or we could have someone else move now and try and get them to draw the focus. I think that's what I'm going to do for fun. I'm going to take our... everyone else is, let's say, 2 spaces away, as they sort of leapt back as this thing came leaping through the wall. And then Leanne, who has a ranged weapon, the torch, she is going to... She has 3 actions. I think it says at the beginning of the turn, everyone gets 3 actions. Yeah. So she has 3 actions to spend. The first thing she's going to do is taunt, spending 1 action, and she becomes the monster's target instead of the guy with the cleaver, who is already really hurt, and we don't want him to be attacked again next. So she leaps up onto the side. I think she wall jumps up this thing, and she's also standing legs akimbo, if that's what that means, holding herself up in the air, and she says, "Oi, ugly," or whatever, and she takes a shot. She is going to do a precise strike. She is aiming right in between the monster's eyes as it looks up wildly, and she aims her torch and fires at it. Precise for her is 3 dice, and strike is nothing. So we're going to roll 3 dice. I think we are going to go... Are we going to go wild? Going wild is tempting, but I think we don't have the odds to be able to do it. So we're just going to play it safe and do a precise shot. We get the 1 success. That is fantastic. And we roll our action die, getting a 2. So it is doing 2 damage. Because she was aiming at the head, the closest part to that is its tusks. So she's going to do 2 damage to its tusks. That was 2 actions in order to do that. And then she's going to try and do a tricky shot. So she's going to try and jump down a little bit. I know it's technically a movement, but she's going to reposition somehow, which is the tricky element of it. That only costs 1 action to do, and she's going to get to roll with another 2 dice. This time I am going to go wild just for the fun of it, on a 33% chance of success. And we get a 3, so she misses. So she's a bit cocky still at this stage, and she tries to reposition and flip around a little bit and take another shot, and this time she misses. She is, however, still the creature's target. It is the creature's turn, and it is now coming at her. Is it going to dig? I think it's still unlikely at this point because it's in its major form. 61, no, it's not going to dig. So it is just going to roll over top of our cleaver guy and try and reach up for her. She is up high, so I think it is going to try. It's either going to strike with its tusks or its claws. Is it the tusks? Yes. Extreme yes. So it runs up underneath her. She is now standing up above it, and it stands up on its hind legs, and it thrusts its tusks into the air, trying to skewer her out of her position, standing up higher in the pass. That means it's going to be another mighty strike. This is going to be its full action, I've decided, because it needs 2 points to do a mighty strike and 1 to move. So this is the 1 turn of it in the round that it's using all 3 actions, and it is going to do a huge attack. Well, in fact, it's only 1 dice. So it's going to do a mighty strike up there. I'm going to give it advantage because I'm exposed and I'm up above it. So it is going to be hitting me on a 4, and it gets a 2, so it misses. It rears up on its back leg and throws its head back with its tusk, and we manage to just scramble back out of the way a little bit. Scramble back out of the way and avoid any harm. That was its turn. Now I'm going to let Cleaver come in. Or who else is on the same side of... Okay, so Prize is also on the same side as Not, and Prize is going to run in and also try and... he's going to strike at the claws this time because his claws are exposed. The monster used his tusks. He is now coming in with a mighty strike, spending 2 actions. He also gets +1 on this, so he's going to go wild as well. We roll 3 dice, getting 1 success. That's fine, and then we get to roll our wild dice, doing 12, and a mighty strike is action value times 2 damage. So a huge mighty strike would do 24 points of damage into this creature's claws and manages to actually break them. That could be cutting them off, that could be just wounding them enough so that he can't use them anymore. And in 1 round, wow, that's what happens when you go wild. In 1 round, going wild, by the way, I had to drop one of those 3 die. In 1 round, we managed to break the creature's claws, and it rears off. It rears up in pain and fear, and it is going to try and dig away next turn. Which is happening... hang on, we still have one action left. And we're going to try and taunt it to see if we can encourage it not to dig away next turn. We sort of maybe know a bit about these creatures, that they're diggers. We want to make sure that it's staying engaged now that we have the upper hand a little bit. So now it is Prize who is going to be the target. I'm going to make it now... it was going to be likely that it would dig. Now it's just going to be 50-50. Does the creature dig on its turn? 80. No, it does not. So it is too crazed, and it's now focused on the thing that just took out its claws. And due to the narrative, because it's still sort of up on its hind legs, it's going to do a belly slam onto this thing. Belly. If you're in your fat form, you gain +2 mighty. Ouch. So it's just falling down in its fat form, gaining +2 mighty. That means it is rolling 3 dice to try and hit, and it's wild dice. It does successfully hit, and it falls down on Prize, happily only doing 4, but because mighty is times 2 damage, doing 8 points of damage to Prize. Prize is injured. Ooh, Prize is actually the one who got... and that takes him down to 0. Okay. I forgot that he was the one that already got attacked. So we go back up to 20, but we are wounded 1 now at this point. The creature falls down and crushes, well, not crushes, but it severely injures Prize, and he doesn't break any bones or anything, but he is momentarily trapped underneath the creature. Oh dear. What are we going to do next? Next, it is time... let's see, what do we want to do here? We want to try and get him off our friend. So we need someone who's strong. We have Nat Zin. She comes in with her frying pan, and she wants to come and strike up under the belly to get this thing off our friend. She is also going to do a mighty strike, leaving her with only 1 action left. But her mighty strike is going to be with 3 dice. She's also going to go wild, only rolling 2. And getting 2 6s, fantastic. Now we get to roll our wild die. That is a 17. We're going to spend one of those successes to make it an 18. And that is actually going to break its tummy as well, its belly. So she strikes up from underneath with this pan and just drives this thing over back on its back, severely hurting it, taking down its belly also to 0. Now this thing is going to get, and this is another mechanic, is going to get an opportunity to retreat. We go into a retreat round where we test whether the thing is going to retreat. Or we can retreat. If we need to get off and repair our tools or something like that, that's what's going to happen. So basically this starts a new round, and the side that is not retreating has the initiative. So if we decide that the monster is going to retreat, it's going to try and flee into an adjacent area. And then we have 1 turn to sort of stop it and or follow it. And I think that's actually where I'm going to leave it here, because I want to talk about a few things. Now, there's a lot of mechanics here that I didn't really dig into. We haven't yet looked at the meals and that kind of thing yet. That's something I'm going to go and do off mic. But you can see the combat does seem to be reasonably tactical. I think it does lend itself reasonably well to solo play because of these combination of words here. When it was reared up on its leg and it uses its belly to do a mighty strike, then it makes sense that it belly flops down on top of the guy, you know? It also shows, I think, that depending on how much you're willing to risk things, it can be quite deadly. I mean, not deadly, you don't actually die in this game, but the monster's rolling a d20 against you, and if they're rolling with a mighty fighting style, like I guess a lot of them are, that's going to be double whatever that value is on the d20. And that is enough to take you down. There's a 50% chance of wounding you in 1 turn in that case. And vice versa. We managed to break 2 of these monsters' parts out of the 3 by going wild and rolling that die, gambling and taking that risk. I think that's a really fun mechanic. I really do like that. I really like how much it feels like Monster Hunter. If you ever played Monster Hunter, there was a lot of that. There was a lot of fighting for a while. The monster would always run away, and you're madly trying to sharpen your weapon or repair your weapon so that it's more effective, and then you're tracking the thing and trying to chase it from area to area. And I can see that really playing out similar here. Maybe you want to retreat a bit so that you can, now that you know what the monster does, you want to eat some food and like recover some things and maybe boost certain stats, repair your weapon, get back in, track that monster down, get back on top of it. It's healing as well when it goes away. I think that really does feel quite a lot like Monster Hunter. And in Monster Hunter, you are taking the monster's parts to make armor. You're still breaking parts, like that's a similar mechanic as in here. And here it's the same idea, it just happens to be a feast. And I can see you could lean into this cooking mechanic more or less, or as much or as little as you wanted to. They have full-blown recipes here. It depends how, if you're really into cooking and making the recipes, that could be a whole half of the game for you. I don't know how much I'm into that. I'd have to sort of read through it and start playing with it. But I could, for example, say that I need an idea for cooking. So one is baked. So something that's baked and crispy and sweet. Okay, so maybe it's a dessert that I'm going for. And then it tells you how to make a recipe. Determine how much stamina it's going to restore based on the ingredients that you used. So, for example, if we have collected some wild woodder on our way, it would restore 8 stamina and gain haste. And then you would see what else it does. So, for example, I'm not sure how this works with the parts, depending on the monster part. Yeah, anyway, so you would get like maybe you would get a bonus to your precise strike because this thing had this claw. Or maybe you get a bonus for digging, for example, because this creature was able to dig. There's a whole chapter in the book I haven't read yet, but I will look into that, and that might be fun. And then you go into downtime stuff. You're rehabilitating, you are cooking, resupplying, you're training, which you can learn a technique to master your tool. So that's cool as well. You can work on a project where basically you can have a really large group challenge, like maybe you're building something in the village or something like that. You are wandering around, finding out about what other problems there are, what other monsters might be around to track, deciding whether you want to go for a specific monster because you want a specific effect to be able to cook from, all that kind of stuff. And in the book, half of the page there's lots and lots of lore in here, surprising amount of lore in here. And all of the effects, all of the ingredients that you could forage or get from beasts. And what they do. There are different villages. There is a whole map. It's basically you use it like more of a point crawl, going between areas and villages and towns. A lot of history, all sorts of good stuff. And then, of course, a huge bestiary with these fantastically imaginative creatures. There's a shakoi here, which looks like a huge tuna or a shark or something, like a tuna crossed with a swordfish, and it has a spiral horn, like a spiral sword. And it is electroreceptive, for example, is a good swimmer, obviously, and it can skewer you with its bill or slap you with its tail. They all have different behaviors. They have different diets. Really interesting, really cool, very imaginative, colorful game. I can see this being an awful lot of fun. I think this is something I want to try co-op with my son. They also have a starting adventure, like an adventure in the book. I don't think anything else has been released from this. It's really went under the radar. I don't know if it's sold at all, if they're going to keep working on it, anything like that. But it does have adventures that look pretty well set up for solo play as well. Basically telling you what happens based on whether or not you succeeded the challenge of tracking the monster, all sorts of things. Really interesting. I would happily keep playing that, but I know that this is getting a bit long, and I'm well aware that I need to read a bit more of the cooking rules for that to be interesting for you to hear. Check out the quick guide if you're interested, if it looks like something you might like to play. The quality of the components is really great. I think it's a really imaginative, interesting game. And that is Wilderfeast on the Solo RolePlayers podcast. Thank you for joining me today. If you like this and you like the other actual plays that I do, I continue most of them over on the Patreon channel at patreon.com/soloroleplayers, where I have dozens of continued playthroughs of the stories that I've started on this show. At the moment, we have more Shadow Dark, Forbidden Lands, Starforged, White Box, I think, as well. Dragonbane also, I think, is coming out next week. And as a patron, you get one of these extra episodes in the week between these main episodes. So you're getting an episode from me every Wednesday. You also get access to the Discord there, where you can come in and chat with all of us in there. We're always sharing our solo experiences, ideas. We even have a channel there now where people just put in random Spark ideas, which actually I forgot I was gonna use today when I was playing, just to open up and choose one randomly. We also have our book club. We have our Shadow Dark book club coming up this Saturday evening, evening, lunchtime, depending on where you are in the world. So there's actually still time to get into that. That would be this Saturday as of the day of release, today being the 14th of May. So there's time still to get into that book club and talk about some Shadow Dark. I also record the episodes, the chats we have in the book club, and put them out as another Patreon episode. And there's the Celebrity Lounge. We had Alex T in there last week from Black Oath Entertainment. We had Tana Pigeon in there, and we had Sean Tompkin already. The next celebrity guest, is already lined up for... it's probably going to be the beginning of next month. I have an episode featuring them as our next episode in 2 weeks from now, and then they're going to come in the Celebrity Lounge shortly after that for a day where we just get to chat with them in Discord and then kick them out at the end of the day. Love to see you over there. It really is such a rewarding experience for me to have this little community that we're building and be able to talk directly to you lot, hear from you, what you're playing, what you're enjoying, getting tips and ideas of different ways that you're all tackling solo role-playing. Really just the best thing. So if you're interested in that, come and check that out. Otherwise, I will be back in 2 weeks' time with a new type of episode format, and you'll just have to wait and see exactly what that is. So until then, continue getting books off your shelf. Be brave enough to try something. Try and hunt a monster in the wild from an RPG that is not at all designed to be played solo. Maybe if you've lost touch with Mythic 2, get back to it. I think that really did help me in this session. Even though we didn't do all that much narratively, just having that guidance of Mythic there really, really helped me. And I didn't at all I felt the process was really smooth going through and figuring out what was going on. That is it from me today, and I look forward to seeing you next time on the Solo Role Players podcast.